Hello viewers and welcome to another edition of our literary program. Today we are here once again and we have another very special guest joining us in this program today. And who is our guest today? It is none other than Dr. Jyotirmoy Prodhani, who is presently the professor and head of the Department of English, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. Well, Dr. Prodhani was in the Tura campus in 2006 when he was a reader, and thereafter when he became a professor, he joined the Shillong campus of the Northeastern Hill University here in Shillong. Well, today we will be talking to him because he has been translating quite a few works. He has written on varied aspects, especially on culture, on ethnicity, on festivals, and he's also delved into poems as well. So I'm sure that this conversation is going to be a very interesting one indeed. I hope that you will be there with us. And here I go then to introduce our guest today, and he is Dr. Jyotirmoy Prodhani. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time today for this program.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
All right, so as I've just said in my introduction that, you have been quite in different places also because as I understand you did your Masters from Cotton College?
I did my bachelor's from Cotton.
Yeah, undergraduate. From then you did your Masters from Pune University. And that is where actually a lot of exciting things started. Tell us about, because it seems that you have met a whole lot of writers. I think it's then when your interest in writing began?
Actually what happens, coming to Guwahati to Cotton College itself was a big kind of experience for me. And it's a big experience, and besides then Guwahati itself in Cotton College, I met quite a number of illustrious people, artists, writers, then of course filmmakers, poets, singers, and more importantly I met some of the finest teachers of that generation. And I must take the name of one teacher who was quite significant in my life, is Pradipacharya, who was in Cotton. And in fact, I was fortunate enough to be one of his students, and I used to visit his house also. And there I found, actually, he had opened up an entirely new world for me. Okay. I'm from a very small place, Golokganj, in Dhruvi district. And coming to Guwahati itself was a big thing. And meeting a teacher like Pradipacharya was a huge kind of an exposure for me. And he was the one who actually imbibed this interest in writing, in poetry, in literature per se. And after that, when I went to Pune University from Cotton, then it was a different kind of an exposure altogether, because you have to go by Dadar Express from Guwahati to Bombay Dadar. Then we realized that India was really quite a big country. The train would not be reaching. It would take days. And very, very long journey, and the Dadar Express, Guwahati Express was notorious for being very late all the time. Okay. Then reaching there in Bombay VT in those days, Victoria Terminus, they used to say. And it was so big a place, people were running, and we didn't know what to do coming to Bombay. And from there we went to Pune. Pune was quiet. And there we saw one thing in the university campus, when we entered the university campus, then we saw a lot of youngsters, students, they were reading all over. Okay, they'll be sitting under the tree, maybe on a bench, on lawn, wherever they are, they'll be sitting there and reading a book, which is quite a kind of new thing for us.
Yeah. Something which we don't see much.
We don't read about it. We used to read that Vidyasagar used to read under the light post, that kind of thing we used to read, but we never saw that actually. Okay? But we realized that, and even when people will be waiting for a bus, the bus stand, city buses, they'll be reading a book. In Pune I saw that. Okay, so that was a kind of experience, how we thought, there's so much things to do.
Okay. I mean, as you were narrating, I could just visualize the whole, and how for you it must have been, because going from a small little place from the northeast of Assam, and then going to such a big place,
right.
And then being exposed. So that must have brought in a change in you also?
Absolutely. Actually, what happens in those days, it was in the 90s, late 90s, and Assam was volatile. Right. Assam was known for all the wrong reasons, like there was insurgency and all kind of things. So we went to Pune, and going to Pune, we realized that places like Bombay and all these places, they had very little idea about Assam. Northeast, of course. They would not be able to place where Manipur, Mizoram,
Right.
they would not be able to place that. Okay. And they would always confuse Shillong with Ceylon, Sri Lanka, you know.
Right.
Then I remember one incident, like in those days, you know, we did not have internet or nothing of that sort. But one big thing was that you can photostate things, Xeroxing. So that was we used to borrow books from British Library and other libraries. And Pune was one good thing, you have plenty of libraries.
Right.
And you can really borrow books. That facility was too big in Pune. So we used to, even borrowing the book was an excitement, whether you read it or not. You know, then I had borrowed this many books and Xeroxing them. So went to a Xerox shop there. Then one girl was there. And when we were actually communicating with the Xerox man at the Xerox, then she out of curiosity asked, where are you from? Then I study in Pune University. No, where are you from? Then I said, I'm from Assam. Then she said, oh, I like Assam. Okay, so that is something you feel good about. Okay. Then naturally the second question would be, why do you like Assam? Then her answer was, oh, I like any foreign country. Okay.
Oh my God.
So that was because she was, I think she was not happy with her own country. Anything foreign is good. So for a moment I felt myself to be a foreigner, you know, like that kind of
And
thing.
it was quite a shock because you were not expecting this kind of an answer at least.
I thought that she would be speaking about tea gardens and all
exactly.
kind of things, the natural things. So so that was the thing. Then I said, no, Assam is not a foreign country. It's part of India. Okay. Then of course she felt a little embarrassed and all that. But still she said, oh yes. But still she was not pretty convinced.
Not too sure. Yeah.
And besides that, when we'd be sitting, and Pune University had one very good ambience, like Shillong itself, you know. But a lot of outside these things, open restaurants would be there, sit-outs. Okay. They would just gather, and sometimes there'll be art, there'll be painting thing would be there, somebody would just reading books. And there would be conversing, you know. Like somebody would ask me, in Assam, तुम्हारा वहाँ आदमी कहाँ रहता है घर में what kind of house do in Assam people have? Okay. Then we realized that is a normal kind of thing they ask. Okay. So to make it more exotic, we said Assam में तो घर नहीं है. Everybody lives on the trees. Okay. and they believe in that. Okay. And they would again with lot of thought they would ask her, चल यार तुम लोग के वहाँ में वो अमिताभ बच्चन वाला फिल्म चलता है कि नहीं चलता है? Okay. Then to show off with no, Amitabh Bachchan, Mithun Chakrabarti nahi chalta hai, only English films. Okay, and they believe in that. Okay. And they think that everybody is having a tea garden. Okay, if you are from Assam, and the major sort of nuisance would be the rhinos. Okay, so they would think that do you have a tea garden? Okay, many of the friends would say yes.
And there again you said yes.
Yes.
You must have claimed yes, I have one.
Everybody has a tea garden. Then China kitna dur hai tum log ke wahan se? Okay. Then it's China is very nearby. We have good relationship with Chinese people. They come here. We go there. You know, and to make it more mysterious
exotic.
for them, exotic, and they believe in that.
Yeah, that is the whole issue about, isn't it? We take a lot of interest, but perhaps enough interest is not being taken about the Northeast.
But one thing I must say, we used to meet a lot of friends from Africa and also Middle East.
Right.
Like Oman, Iraq. Many some people came from Iraq. They also went on asylum, here in Saddam Hussein time. That was just before Gulf War, and they used to have acquired significant amount of knowledge about Northeast.
Okay.
Even the students coming from Africa, people like even Nigeria, Kenya, they used to know about Assam. I think they used to study India before coming here.
Right. They used to take interest in the whole of the country.
Yes.
All right. Now, talking about interest, it seems that you have a varied interest, right? Because while you were teaching also, while you were doing your research also, you had varied interests starting from classical theatre to performing studies to translation to literary theory, etc. So has all those experiences molded you to the person that you are today and to what you started writing?
Actually, whatever you read, what I believe in, whatever you get exposed to, in a person, like I'm a teacher, so my exposure would be mainly through reading. Okay, so whatever I have read, whatever I've learned, and whatever I'm trying to understand, everything actually adds up to your self-understanding, self-consciousness, the way you are, you think. So yes, whatever I have been doing, like my interest is, of course, one of the interests is theatre. And the literary theory, of course, is one big thing in the 90s, you have to know literary theory. So fortunately, we had some very good teachers at that time. So that was one thing. And besides other literary texts, be it poetry, novel, everything actually, influences you.
Yeah.
And that is how.
That is how you started. Because incidentally, you started writing firstly from newspapers,
Yes, yes,
right? Assam
yes.
Tribune and Sentinel.
Yes,
Tell
yes.
us about those days. What were you writing about those days?
Actually, once I came back from Pune to my own place, then I joined as a part-time lecturer in my own college, where I did my higher secondary,
Right.
Chilarai College.
Okay.
So that was the instant job available for me. So I was doing, and also I thought of writing, writing for newspapers. And what happened? In those days, there would be reporters who would be writing in Assamese vernacular news dailies. But there are very few from my kind of place who would be writing in the English dailies.
Right.
One of my teachers was there, was writing. So I thought of, okay, since I know a little bit of English, let me write. Okay, at least my place would get exposed. Nowadays, when of course people try to make their places exposed through social media, those days the biggest thing was newspapers.
Right.
Okay, so I started writing for the Sentinel, Assam Tribune, and also there used to be some newspapers called Northeast Times
Okay.
and Northeast Observer. Okay, so in those newspapers also I used to write, and I became a kind of a regular correspondent for the Assam Tribune.
Okay. So what were the initial things you started writing?
I'll be writing small things, like I'll be writing mostly about some incidents happening in my place. Okay. Then small or big. Sometimes I used to write about some of the people of my place. Okay. Sometimes the political situations of my place. All right.
Yeah.
And interesting, when I was writing mostly the political items, then in those days there's IB officials, they used to come and contact with me about the sources, what are the inputs, So I used to feel a little bit powerful while I was writing for newspaper, because in those days we had these dial telephones,
Yes.
and I would sit beside the telephone and start. Anything happens, I used to straight make phone calls to the SP's office, DC's office, So I was young in those days, and I used to feel powerful. And whenever I would say that I'm speaking on behalf of this newspaper, they would be allowed. So all this thing used to happen.
Okay, all right. But then you soon came down to translation
Yeah.
work. And one of the first book that you've translated is called Madhupur Bohudur.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, this all happened in Guwahati Book Fair. So in Guwahati Book Fair, again, this is it was happening in those days when I was in Cotton, first started, then continued. Then when I would go to the book fairs, then I would buy books. And I started buying books. Then I also bought books of Shilabhadra. Okay. Shilabhadra I knew, but till that time I did not read him much. Okay.
They were in vernacular, Assamese.
Assamese, yes. Then when I picked up his book, the first book was, I think, Madhupur Onnanno Golpo. That was the kind of a book. So I bought that. But while reading, then I discovered that these books are about my own place, Gauripur. Okay. Though I knew Shilabhadra just, or I read something about him, not his real writings as such. Okay. So when I started reading, then the characters were so familiar to my place. Okay. And mostly he would be writing about the Rajabari of Gauripur, okay, with which we had our own associations. More importantly, because a legendary folk singer Pratima Barua and filmmaker Pramotesh Barua, his stories, would be speaking about those characters. And sometimes he would intersperse, it was an Assamese writing, the local dialect, the local language also. So I felt very close to that. And thought of, why don't I translate some of them?
Right.
Okay. Then I translated one or two stories. I sent them to Sentinel and the Assam Tribune. Okay. Then I used to keep those newspapers. One day, one newspaper came, and I saw that thing is happening, printed. You can understand what kind of excitement that can be. It's almost like I've arrived.
Right.
Okay. And that's about. Then a few days later, I received one letter. Those were the inland letter days, Inland letter and postcards, basically. So one inland letter came in, impeccable handwriting. And when I opened it, that letter was from Shilabhadra himself. Okay. So he actually appreciated my translations. Okay. That he read this. translations, and he came to know about the publication through one of his friends, Binoy Tamuli, and he had encouraged me. So I'm happy that you have translated these things. So it was a huge kind of a reward for me, in fact.
Absolutely. You know, from the author himself.
From the author himself.
Yeah.
And we used to hold him in very high esteem. And more importantly, he was from Gauripur, Reboti Mohan Datta Chaudhary. But his pen name, pseudonym was Shilabhadra. Okay. Then I saw that letter to my mother and to my friends, so Shilabhadra, all these things. And his handwriting was, a very beautiful, almost a manicured handwriting that was. So, and he told me that, why don't you translate my book, the whole book?
Second book?
The book that he had won Sahitya Academy Award for later on. So I had picked up that one, Madhupur Bohol. It took a lot of time for me.
Okay.
Then, unfortunately, the book got published by Sahitya Academy after his death. Okay, so I could not actually present the book to him. But that was a commitment I could keep, but it took time.
Yeah, but then talking about translation, when you translate something from the original, can you really bring the same, same book alive the way it was?
See,
or does it get diluted to some extent?
So this is, of course, a very significant observation and concern, in fact. See, I was reading about world literature, Goethe, he had written about world literature. So when we speak about world literature, which are the countries or which are the writers we actually accommodate in that particular category? Okay. When it comes to perhaps Shakespeare, even Byron, Wordsworth, these are English literature. Okay. These are not alien to us as such. From the English school days, we read them. But when it comes to writers like, say, Tolstoy, Balzac, Ibsen, Flaubert, a whole lot of European writers, even or Pablo Neruda, okay, then Anna Akhmatova, Russian poets. We also read them, okay, and apart from that, like for example, if you are not reading Urdu, you might be reading Godin in translation. Okay, then what happens? These writers, we make our associations and intimacies with the translated work. Okay, like for nowadays, Orhan Pamuk, Nobel laureate. So whatever we know and whatever we think that we know about them, we know about the world, and whatever things we think that we've been enriched by, we've been everything happened through the translations. Okay, and we do not have any access to what they wrote in origin.
Yes.
Okay, so there would definitely be writers who may not be as happy about the translated works. Okay. But this is true when we transfer from attacks from one linguistic domain to another. The very act of transference, will carry different dimension altogether. Okay, so it becomes a major challenge for the translator, how to retain.
But the good part is that it creates wider readership.
Definitely,
more
because
people.
translation has to be there. Nowadays, what happens? We have become increasingly a multilingual society globally. Okay. And everybody is more into. There was a time, suppose, for example, I'll give one example from Assam itself. There was a time when people would accept Assamese to be the ultimate language. Everybody would cultivate that language, They would read that language. But now, the small language, communities, they also want to revive those languages.
Right.
Okay? So, they also want to write in that language, read in those languages, even study in these languages.
Right.
So, what happens, even state like Assam would become more multilingual. Then how do we reconnect, with the communities? The translation will have to play a very, very significant and major role in the coming days.
Okay. And, just quickly an insight into your other works that you have, written. If you can just mention a few.
Okay, actually, we are academics, we have to keep on writing. That is a part of your job. But the thing is, my interest is in theatre. Then, of course...
in film also, because you have written a script for film also.
Yeah, I did for Rajvanshi film I have done. But that film is to be actually materialized. And but I did some subtitling for Assamese film, which even won an award. So that is there. And I have recently translated Rajvanshi poems into English. That is one, This Land, This People. And of course, Shilabhadra's work, which I translated.
And songs also.
A song I have written, and yes.
In Rajvanshi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we now hear from you, can you read for us something that interests you? If you you could just read for us.
Yes, I may, if
Yes.
you allow me. Let me
Yes,
just,
please.
this is the book recently published. This This Land, This People.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is, I have translated Rajbangshi poems. I was there, and of course, my teacher Pradipachari is also there. And you can see this. This is the motif. This is the Solapith motif. It's called Neta. Neta is part of the Bishohari or Manosha myth. Okay, and this Neta is very close to our culture. And in the watermark, in the cover, you can see Narayani Mudra of Naranarayan. Okay, which are 16th century mudras, which is one of the most powerful royal coins of Northeast India. You know. Now, Neta, why Neta is important here, I'm just giving you one sort of, so that you get a little familiar with the kind of things I have just done in this book. Neta, this is the myth of Manosha, you know, when Lokhinder died, then Behula actually brought Lokhinder on a kind of raft, okay, and she was supposed to go and meet Shiva in heaven, in paradise. So they had come up to Dhumri, okay, our place. And there was a washerwoman, Netai, okay? She had helped Behula to meet Shiva, all right? So that association is there, and Neta is now a part of the deity, all right? So I just wanted to keep that folk association with the poetry. And here I'll just read one poem, which is of course translated in this book, but translated by Pradipachari, but I want to begin with this one. This poem is, this is in fact a song, okay? And this song was sung by Pratima Barua Pandey, all right? And the origin song goes like this, Dine Dine Khoshiya Poribe Rongila Dalaner Mati, okay? Now Pratima Barua was a princess, okay? And she's also a folk singer. And when she sings, this is, Rongila Dalan basically is a metaphor of body, okay? That day by day your body crumbles, you know, as the time passes. But when we're translating, the Pradipacharya was also referring to Pratima Barua, the historicity of Pratima Barua. But she is a princess. She actually has a palace. And that palace is actually crumbling down, you know. So now this is a translation of that particular famous song. Okay, I'll just read a bit of this. Origin is, of course, Dine Dine Khoshiya Poribe Rongila Dalaner Mati Kon Ronge Goshaiji. That's the thing, okay? So it reads like this, it crumbles day by day. The bright mansion smolders away. It crumbles day by day. God, it crumbles in its own way. For not the house builds with futile strife and bickering. God, it crumbles in its own way. The bone house with the high top tied in knots and joints, underneath peacocks fan their feathers, mocking stars shine in the void. Childhood spent in fun and games, youth in enjoyment, age in thoughts and worries. Where's the time for praying? God, it crumbles in its own way. So this is a kind of a legendary folk song, basically. Okay, it speaks about the crumbling of body. Also, it speaks about the crumbling of your own surrounding, your history, okay, crumbling of your own, you know. So it brings in a kind of a nostalgia, and only thing remains is your memory, okay. So this is what one of the translations. So,
incidentally, I mean, in 1934 was a significant year, isn't it? When Mahatma Gandhi had come, and your father, I mean, because you all belong from the, you know, the zamindari class of people. And it seems that on 10th April 1934, Mahatma Gandhi had visited also your grandfather's house, Kailash Chandra Prodhani.
yes.
And any stories that you heard?
My place is small, but it has kind of some interesting aspects to that. Okay, one is, of course, this is the first railway station, 1901. You know, earlier the name of the place was different. Then there was Golok Borua, who was the, in fact, son-in-law of Raja Prabhat Borua, you know, of Gauripur. So he had donated the land to the railway station, so to the British company, and the name the place came with Golokganj, okay, because of that. And whoever had to come to Assam, they had to come to Golokganj because that was the junction. Okay, so it's the entry point, gateway. And from there, my grandfathers and all, they used to go to Dhaka and Calcutta from my place. Just you cross the road, rail is there, the world is open for you, and the whole country is open for you. So in 1934, many times in fact, Mahatma Gandhi came to Assam, but on that occasion, in 1934, he had actually got down in Golokand station, and he had a kind of sojourn at the house of Kailash Chandra Prodhani, and where he had the first meeting on that in Assam, a small public meeting he had, and he had raised some fund also. Now a lot of stories are there. Like my grandmother, basically, my grandmothers used to speak about when Mahatma Gandhi came. Then one of my uncles, my father's elder brother, then there was a kind of, they said there was a kind of a small ritual of burning things. Okay. Then they would say that my uncle was very small. He was just sitting, and he would just throw his cap also on the fire. So this kind of stories, and of course the other stories will be there. A lot of people came, a lot of food was there.
I'm sure as children, and when you grew up, listening, you were quite at awe, right?
Yeah.
As to know that your grandfather was also an important personality to have met. A man like Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes. Because first major thing you read in books is Mahatma Gandhi.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Then when you get to know him a bit, then you can look back at your own house.
Yes.
Oh, he was here also.
Yeah. So it becomes a historic place.
Some
itself.
kind of thing. You feel also as if I'm also important part of that.
So quickly, as we are almost about to wrap up,
Yeah.
so what are your future plans? What more are you planning to write? Are you planning to write focusing on some particular aspect, more of poems maybe?
No, actually what happens, there are plenty of things are happening. One is, of course, one of my friends, he's Modip Datta, he has written one of the first ecological memoir. So that I have translated, but this is now editing that one. That is one, the pipeline. Another book, actually, this is a collection of essays by again Pradeep Acharya, this Northeast writings, that is one. And one thing we are doing, we want to work, an elaborate work on the theatre of Northeast. That is one thing we want to do. And besides, of course, some other writings are there, like I sometimes also write myself, and I'm also writing one small novel kind of a thing, which is being published in an online journal. I thought that this is about my own place in the backdrop of Assam movement. Okay. And how it, because we are very young in those days, in mid-80s, we're in school, but that remained one of the major events of our life that shaped in a great way the way we are. Okay, so I thought, let me try to tell that story. Okay,
so, because teaching itself is quite taxing, yet you find time for writing. So quickly, a word or two on especially those people who are watching this program, because we always complain we don't have time. Yet you have a significant amount of time, it seems, that besides teaching, taking care of these students, also, family life is also there. And so how do you balance all that?
See, nobody has a time as such. If you think, it also happens sometimes, we also think that the kind of things I should have been able to do, not been able to do because there is lack of time. But at the same time, I see some of the people who are doing more than me, they're also having a lot of time to do more significant works. Okay, so what is important is that for a writer, okay, but I think that writing is an ethical obligation. You have to write. Okay, since we can write, it doesn't mean that you have to be a great poet or a novelist, but you have to tell your stories. You have to keep your stories for your future generation. Sometimes I think that had my grandmother written something, okay, I would have had that thing to build up upon. Right? So everybody has a kind of an obligation we must write. That is one. Secondly, kind of profession I am in, we have to write academic writing. But my commitments are more towards that I should write for the small place, whatever it is, for those what I can leave behind. What I can leave behind, or what should the thing that, because every place gives you something, you have an obligation to give it back. The only way we can give it back is by telling or keeping their stories in the kind of an archive, by telling those things. So at present, I'm thinking of writing kind of small history about my own place. That is one is there in the pipeline. Apart from, of course, the other academic engagements which of course we'll be doing.
So it's all about balancing your time.
Yes, and besides, also what I think, even recently Temsula Ao had passed away. She said one significant thing. I also asked the same question: where do you find time? Then she said that Jyotirmoy, what you have to do is that you have to write, and you have to begin writing right at the beginning of the day. Okay, write in the morning. Okay, you have to write in the morning. And she said that in fact she wrote maximum amount of her writing
in the morning.
In the morning. Okay?
Mind is fresh.
Mind is fresh. Then you can open up. All these things are there. And besides, what happens? You put yourself, force yourself on a kind of a process that I have to.
Right. Okay. So
That's
that becomes kind of a routine also.
Yeah.
Like just like our other routine that we follow every day.
Yes. Yes.
This also becomes a habit and a routine.
And one of my friends, actually I'm also working on that. He had written diaries. He started writing his diaries from when he was 14 years old. Okay. And what he did, he had invented a script for himself so that nobody can read that.
Oh.
When he was in school, he invented that script.
Okay.
Okay. Only he can read that.
Okay.
Okay. So he actually said everything, bare all kind of. So he is requesting me to work on that. He said one thing, that even if for 10 minutes, you have to write regularly.
Okay, all right. That's wonderful, actually. And with that, actually, we would like to wind up because, most of us, of course, crib that we don't have time. But even if it's for 10-15 minutes early in the morning,
that's it.
We can, and we should have that practice.
Write something very ordinary thing, just keep it.
Yeah, but then it will slowly improve, right?
Yeah.
As one goes on writing, whatever little stories, whatever little happenings, but then you grow.
Yeah, and more than writing, what I think is that one should read.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
True.
And every writer becomes a writer only through their reading.
Readings.
Okay, right. I was reading Susan before coming to your program. I was reading Susan Sontag's one essay on translation, anticipating some question in translation. There she said that actually we establish our association through reading, and mostly through past and through the writers who are already not there.
Right.
But there's a reading that actually makes you, or what you
builds you up
you.
also.
Reading is more important.
Okay. I mean, we have really completely exhausted our time. I
That's
know
true.
you have so much more to speak, and I'm sure
No,
I would have loved to listen to so much more experiences that you perhaps had to narrate to us. But then time is always a constraint,
We've covered almost
and
everything.
we need to wind up this conversation. But it's been a pleasure hearing you.
Same
So
here.
many little stories, those little anecdotes when you were in Pune, and then how you grew up, from those halting days to what you are today. We wish you plenty of good luck. May you continue to write, to translate more, to go into film theatre that you are doing also, and enrich the Northeast even more through your writing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much,
It's been a
Moshe.
pleasure
Thank
talking to you.
Same here. Thank you.
All right, so viewers, that was Dr. Jyotirmoy Prodhani for you, Head and Professor, Department of English. And I'm sure you've enjoyed this conversation because through his varied experiences that he is the man that he is today. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that you'll join us next time and again when we shall be back with you with another edition of this literary program with another of our guests. Until next time, from all of us here, and from the two of us here especially, it's wishing you goodbye.